I'm Alex.
And I'm Teddy.
And we are
The Button Mappers.
Hey, the Button Mappers.
SEGA Sanshiro. SEGA Sanshiro.
SEGA Sanshiro is a fucking hero.
And a legend, and a scholar, and a gentleman.
SEGA Sanshiro.
For those who don't know, let's inform them. SEGA Sanshiro did the commercials for the SEGA Saturn way back in the days when we were just youngins.
It's little babbies.
Yeah, and he's part of the reason that the Saturn is super hype.
Yeah. The basis of all his commercials was that if you didn't play the Sega Saturn, he would like choke you out.
I mean,
that was it.
They hold up pretty good, though, I gotta say.
They're funny.
I mean, nowadays it's like even more of a threat because the Sega Saturn is very hard to collect for.
I think the one that stands out to me when I think of those commercials is the one, I think it was like themed around House of the Dead, where he's like choking out zombies and then they keep getting back up. And then he's like, what the heck? That's funny.
Yeah, I guess
Sega Saturn!
Yeah. It's a console.
Welcome to the Button Mappers Sega Saturn intellectual video.
Hooray.
We're launching from Earth. We're taking a expedition to Saturn.
I brought some coffee for the red.
Sega Saturn. Are you fastened in, Teddy? Because we're about to begin the launch sequence.
I'm all strapped in and ready to launch.
Okay.
So take me on a journey. Take me on a journey to the Sega Saturn and what it is and what it's all about.
Sega Saturn, probably the most underappreciated console, maybe. Do you think that's true?
No, I don't think that's true.
What do you think is the most underappreciated console?
Probably like a Master System or the MSG. I'm called the MSG. MGS.
MSG.
The Sega MSG. Yo, that'd be great in some ramen / miso soup. But yeah, whatever that one is, I think that one is. I don't think many people understand what that is.
Isn't it like the MSX? Is that right, or something like that? I don't know. The MSG is delicious though.
Yeah. So I don't think the Saturn is on the level of MSG, but I do think it is in a bracket of its own.
Yes, the Sega Saturn, Sega's third home console, I guess. I mean, once again, if you want to count the SG 1000, what the hell it was called, or along with the Master System. I mean, I guess those are the same console, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing about the Saturn, right, is that when you think of the Sega, the Saturn is one of probably 3 consoles that you think about.
Yeah, but it's probably the last one. A lot of people think of either the Genesis or the Dreamcast.
Oh, that's fair. I'd say, opinion. But of those 3 consoles, I definitely would agree that it's probably the more underappreciated and undersought.
I think it's just misunderstood, honestly.
When did you first hear about the Saturn?
So I've been a Sega fan for a pretty long while, and it was around the time that I first had like access to like the internet and YouTube and Wikipedia and stuff. Of course, me being a Sega fan, I had a Sega Genesis, and I knew about the Dreamcast. I had friends that had the Dreamcast. I didn't have one at the time, but whenever I was able to actually access the internet, I would like look up Sega facts and stuff like that, and I don't know, through like a bunch of YouTubers like Classic Game Room. I think I used to watch Screw Attack whenever they existed. Do you remember them? They were like, it was forever ago.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, it was like on game trailers whenever that existed. And like a few other gaming outlets talked about the Saturn. So it was like this like mysterious like Sega console that I've never seen before.
And it's interesting because both you and I grew up in the era of the Saturn. I mean, Nintendo 64 was like our home console / generation console. And the
Oh yeah,
PlayStation for a number of people. Like, I
yeah.
knew about Crash. I knew about
I
your
had
Marios.
I say, well, I had both a PS1 and a 64. I preferred the 64 for the most part.
Yeah, but I mean, that's
there
the
was
same
some,
for most households. Most people had the PlayStation.
yeah. I say so, but I still had the PlayStation, and I played games like Crash and Ape Escape and stuff. Like I still enjoyed that console too. But I had never growing up. I never heard about the Saturn. I didn't know anybody that had a Saturn.
And I mean, that's part of the interesting history about it is that it came out. It was there.
It was there.
We just didn't know where there was.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and I'm sure there are people that definitely had one as a kid and think about fondly, and they were like, "Oh, the Saturn was my favorite growing up,"
Yeah.
But I just haven't met anybody like that.
What compels you towards it today?
Well, for one, being a Sega fan, I think it's the number one gateway drug to the Saturn library. Oh, sorry, that's a weird one. But yeah, yeah, definitely being a Sega fan. I think if you're not a Sega fan, it's a little hard to sway someone towards the Saturn, because it is very tailor made.
Okay.
What do you think?
About what compels me towards the Saturn?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to kind of answer two questions in one. The first is when I had heard about it. It was definitely through your internet personalities. It was Classic Game Room. It was you. It was you who sent me my Sega Saturn, which I'm really grateful for.
Me?
Yeah, you. Way back in the days. Gosh, that's a video for another day. But I remember looking at it like, there are games on here that look really cool, like I might want to play one day, but I probably won't get the chance because I've never even seen a Saturn in real life. One of them to me was like Knights. That game was really abstract, and I hadn't seen anything like it even in 2015, some maybe 20 years later.
Mm-hmm. So and and like they also don't really re-release a lot of those games either. I think Knights actually did get a re-release on like PS3 and 360, but I don't think many Saturn games really get re-releases. Because so yeah, a lot of it is like these like mystical games that it's almost like they're like legends.
I mean, you've got some really great work done, like. If you do some comparisons like Virtua Racing, right? There's a Genesis version. Barely runs. And I know there's a 32X version, which, I mean, yeah, that's a game. But then you've got the Saturn version, and that's a class of its own.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel there's something about the quality of games on the Saturn that makes them compelling?
Yeah, definitely. If we're talking about... The Saturn's weird because it was built as a 2D game machine. It was built to be like a successor to the Genesis. But I guess Sega didn't really foresee like everybody jumping to the 3D bandwagon all of a sudden. So then they had to like slap in a 3D processor. so the quality of 3D games aren't nearly as good as the PS1 or 64, but it still has its upsides. Like the 2D games look great. So some of the 3D games do look great. It's just I don't know. I don't think it can handle as much.
Well, you've played a lot of racing games on the console, right?
Yeah.
And how do you think those handle?
They play well. They feel well. I know like The prime example is Daytona. Like Daytona had two versions on the Saturn because the first one is just not good, really. like you can barely see the draw distance is so bad. Like it's like right in front of your car pretty much, so you can't really see that far ahead. And then they had to actually re-release it later on with a better version of the game where you could actually see the track. But there's some other ones like like Sega Rally's pretty good. I have Virtua Racing. You said is pretty good, pretty solid. I have the Need for Speed, like the first one, which is just called the Need for Speed, which I find funny. It's okay. I don't think it's the best, but Sega Rally and Virtua Racing are definitely handled really well as like 3D Saturn games.
One thing I would say about both of them is they have some serious personality, especially for boxcar racers. You think, oh, a Daytona game, like, why do I care about that? Then go on YouTube and watch the soundtrack and watch the guy belt out of his lungs singing, Daytona, let's go away.
Let's go away.
And same thing with Virtua Racing. There's a bunch of like quirky little sound snips that play as you cross checkpoints.
Game over, yeah.
Well, that's a Sega Rally one, no?
Yeah, that's Sega Rally, but I love that one too.
Yeah, that's another classic.
It's just and I think this is interesting because like the Genesis, there were like arcade ports on the Genesis, but a lot of the Sega Genesis games were like almost tailor made for the console, you know. And it felt like the Saturn, they were trying to maybe push arcade gaming at home, because they'd had the Sega Racing games, and then they had like the Sega Fighting games, like you had like Virtua Fighter, and stuff like that. Then you had like the light gun games, like House of the Dead and Virtual Cop. So it almost felt like they were trying to maybe push it towards being more like an arcade, like box or something.
What do you feel is your most represented genre on the console?
That's a hard one. It's either going to be, like I said, racing games are really good, fighting games, or spaceship shooters. Maybe I don't think, because like it's hard to say. If we're talking about like Genesis, I would say beat 'em ups or platformers for sure. But Saturn is so the library is so different. But definitely those three style of games definitely stand out for me.
Okay.
What about you?
I wish I could say shooters for the console, but it's just so hard to get any.
Well, that's a different story.
I own a total of 2. And one's Darius Gaiden. And the other is not Star Fox Adventures. I'm joking. The other is Solar Eclipse, which most people probably haven't heard of. No, thankfully there's no Clue Clue Land for the Saturn.
Yeah, Clue Clue Land on Saturn.
That's in a planet all on its own.
That's and then I have Galactic Attack, which is pretty good. And then there's a few others. But that's more something you want to import anyway, or the spaceship shooters, because Jesus Christ, we talked about this in one of the other videos. I forgot which one. I think it might have been the was it Game Talk we talked about it, where it's so pricey to get North American Sega Saturn games.
And that to me is a real shame. I mean, how do you feel about the process of importing Saturn games?
I mean, my biggest issue is the wait, because usually if I'm buying something, it's because I want to play it now, and if I'm importing a game, I'm like, I'm going to import Burning Rangers, but more than likely in a month, I would have already found something else to be playing. So it's like waiting for the import is kind of the downside.
You haven't jumped on the import bandwagon, have you?
No, all my Saturn games are American long box, which I love the long box. I know we talked about that. I love the long boxes. And so yeah, they are a little pricey. Like I paid I think I paid $60 for my copy of Resident Evil, or $50 or $60. It was somewhere around there for my copy of Resident Evil on a Saturn, which is a little high.
The real question is it worth it?
Is it worth it? Well, I'm a Resident Evil fan, so
But I mean, specifically with the process of, paying the extra price for the North American copy, or I guess for our UK listeners, for the PAL.
I guess if I was smarter, I would I would import, which I do want to get to doing one day, because there are some games, like I said, like Burning Rangers, Panzer Dragoon, a few other games that like I know for a fact that I probably won't buy a North American copy of ever. So there are reasons for me to import, and I will do that.
Yeah, so I guess the listeners can take this as the pre-import episode.
Yeah. Maybe if we ever get into importing, we could do an episode on importing. But as of right now, we don't really play that game. At least not on the Saturn.
Yeah. I mean, you said it was the weight for you. For me, it's just, if I'm going to experience one of these games, I don't want to have to learn another language just to do it. I mean, there's games you could get away with it for, like, your spaceship shooters or your fighting games where it probably doesn't matter. But, I mean, I want to play Panzer Dragoon Saga someday. I want to really experience that. I would love to play Sonic R.
Would you?
Yeah.
Would?
I've never played it, so I don't really know anything about it.
Well, you can just get the Gems collection on the GameCube.
Oh, can you? Okay.
Yeah, it's on there.
All right, so that's a way.
Don't waste
the fact
your money.
still stands that I feel it's a disservice to my console to do it in almost a completely foreign language.
Of the games you have, what are the standouts? Like, name 3 standout games that you, if you had to sell all but 3 of your games.
Well, that's easy because I only own 12.
Well, yeah, me either. I don't have a giant library either.
So no judgment here because it's only what I own. Knights, Darius Gaiden, and Virtua Racing. Yeah.
That's a good. That's a pretty good selection because you got your shooters, your arcade racing, and then Knights is a unique I wouldn't call it a platformer, but it's a flying game.
It's a good way to put it. You would describe it as, I guess, arcadey, arcadey, and I don't know. It's just arcade game. It's not an arcade game, but
it's definitely that's probably the Sonic of the Saturn. Knights is the standout.
Well, it was recognized as the flagship title for the console.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's the flagship game.
How do you feel about that being the mascot of the Saturn?
I think it's nice. I think it's weird that Sonic kind of because he was so popular on the Genesis, and then they just didn't do much with him. They did 3D Blast, Sonic Jam, Sonic R, but they didn't do a main game with them on the Saturns. But I feel like Knights is still a good replacement, and Knights is a fun game. I don't have the Saturn version, but like I said, I do have the PS3 re-release, so I have played that one, and I do really enjoy that game.
What were your 3 titles?
Let's see. If I had to get rid of all but 3 of my games, first one's Fighters Mega Mix. Sega Rally. And then last one's gonna be, you know what? You just sent it to me, but but whatever. It's Clockwork Knight. I'm still playing that one, but I think that one's really fun.
All right, very cool.
Yeah.
Now, collecting for the Saturn, especially in the North American region, it's a bit of a treat, right?
Well, it's for one thing, it's kind of hard to find those games in North America. But then again, when you do find them, it's almost like you've stumbled upon some great treasure,
Yeah, I know you had the one story about finding Galactic Attack in a store for $3.
I found it disc only in a pile of PlayStation 1 games, which I usually don't look through. It was just loose disc PS1 games, and I was just looking through it for the heck of it. I was bored. And I stumbled upon Galactic Attack for the Sega Saturn loose for $3, and I was like, "Holy shit!" that was a great day.
That sounds like a great. I mean, if I could spend $3 for Galactic Attack on the Saturn, I would. Especially considering the going price is probably $60 or $70 online.
Yeah, I think it ranges around there from $50 to $70, somewhere around there.
And the bizarre thing too is that like we both own Title Legends too, so we could both play it. But I'd still be willing to drop that $60 just to experience it on the Saturn.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's just, you know, like I know for a fact playing Knights on my PS3 and playing Knights on my Saturn is going to like feels completely different because like the Saturn controller is just it feels nice, you know. It just has like a nice feel to it. It's all like it's almost like a 6-button like Genesis controller, but like much better.
Yeah, it's pretty smoothed out as far as the D-pad goes.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's really nice for fighting games, fucking especially, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For fighters, Mega Mix is fun.
How do you think the Saturn compares to the Dreamcast?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I feel like there wouldn't be a Dreamcast without the Saturn, you know, because they almost had to like, you know, because like for as much as I like the Saturn, it's hard not to recognize its faults and recognize that it didn't do what it needed to do for Sega. So it was almost like they took the stuff that didn't work with the Saturn and made it work with the Dreamcast.
Okay. That's an interesting perspective.
Like it launched with the Sega, sorry, you know, like with a Sonic title, you know, like, you know, like a Sonic Adventure. You know, it launched with a bunch of third-party support, you know, like instead of having the games be super hard to find, you could burn Dreamcast games if you really wanted to. They're just CDs, but you could find those things everywhere. You know, you could find them for pretty cheap, actually. You know, a handful of them. You know, it was just. What do you think?
It's interesting because the internet sides on the against Bernie Stolar camp. He said he's like famous for saying the Saturn is not the future of Sega.
Yeah, future of Sega or whatever. It was like, yeah, like, and you said that while they were still promoting the Saturn.
Yeah.
It's
I guess,
like if,
you know, the thing is the Dreamcast, and I don't want to go into a whole discourse on that, but the Dreamcast really does have some standout titles.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost is the culmination of some things that the Saturn hadn't realized. I think Shenmue is like, you know, I'm playing it now. It's really a beautiful game that holds up super well for 3D adventuring. And, you know, that's, if you try like Tomb Raider on the Saturn, well, good luck to you.
Yeah, good fucking luck.
So, you know, I can see like the pity party for the Saturn that it didn't quite, you know, live its run. It didn't quite get all the games that it needed. It didn't quite get all the reprints of, you know, certain games. I still want to play Panzer Dragoon Saga some way, somehow. And, you know, you said that Saturn games are a bit of a rarity in their re-releases. I am glad to see a start to that trend in the most recent console iterations. Like you said on the Switch that Virtua Racing is now out. Would you say it's like Saturn level?
It's probably better. I think it's more arcade level.
Okay. So maybe the Saturn, you know, still has a chance.
Yeah. Well, they are doing that remake of Panzer Dragoon too.
That's true. That's another one.
Yeah. So there's that. You know, like I said, they did Knights before and Sonic R before. So there is a chance that maybe we'll see some of these other Saturn games. I think, you know what I think really comes to, which I just like realized this, is that like I think a lot of people that really look down on a Saturn as like, oh, it's the failed Sega console. They're trying to hold it in the same regards as like the PS1, you know, like, oh, it should have been the PS1 of the, you know, like Sega's PS1. But did it really need to be? Like, you already have the PlayStation console. Like, it's its own thing. Why would you want another console to be exactly like that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't look to going back to the Saturn to play 3D gaming. Not at all.
Yeah, exactly.
I do not have any interest in that console generation for that, you know. And even the PlayStation 1, I think, is like really hard to do 3D. Anything.
I always appreciate whenever a console comes out and it's like the more unique console of its generation. Because I can tell you for a fact, I don't give a shit whether you prefer the 360 or the PS3. They're exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they play the same games and they look exactly the same.
And it's interesting that that dichotomy is not repeated for the Xbox One and PS4. I think those two are very different, despite some similarities.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like, it's almost like I hate it when people like look down on a Saturn for being different. Like, is that a bad thing? That it was different?
I don't know that many people really look down on it nowadays. I think maybe for its time, maybe it was.
There are still the like people that still call it like the shit Sega console, the biggest failure Sega ever had. Like, you can easily go on YouTube and find tons of videos labeled that.
Well, I wonder if some of it's out of nostalgia, though. So I do see that as a clickbaity thing, like why the Saturn failed. I have no interest in discussing why it failed. I don't know. I'm not an authority on it, but I guess maybe a reason that people do that is they cling to that kind of like common negativity, and they're like, oh, that's something we can bash in video games, so we're gonna do that.
It's the bad one,
Yeah.
Yeah, but
which does not reflect in the price of these games.
No, they're sought after.
They're very sought after. What do you think is one trophy piece in your Saturn collection? It doesn't have to be like the most expensive, but it's like this is like your grail for the console library.
Maybe it is just Galactic Attack based on the price I paid for it. Because I'm never gonna find a deal like that ever again.
Okay, I'm surprised you didn't pick like Doom or Resident
Well, Doom
Evil.
sucks.
Yeah, so it's not much of a trophy.
Go
right?
watch my video on it. I hate that game.
I know, but there's something about finding it in like a Sega Saturn.
Doom on the Saturn.
It's like, brush off my shoulders. I own Doom on the Saturn.
I own Doom on the Saturn. The back of the box says that it has multiplayer and all the levels. It doesn't. It lies. Maybe Resident Evil, just because I am a Resident Evil fan, and I don't think a lot of people realize that it came out on the Saturn, and it actually, it's as good as the PS1 version. It does have some slight differences, but it's not like anything major. So that's a good one, because like people are always like, whenever I'm like, oh, I'm a big Resident Evil fan, and they're like, oh, well, do you have Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube? And I'm like, I got Resident Evil 1 on the Saturn, bitch.
Like shocked face. Oh, what's that?
Yeah.
So that's when the conversation stops.
Yeah. What about you? What's your piece? Your holy grail?
So, I own two that I think are like the trophies, and one is obviously Knights. I'm happy to have gone back and re-experienced that, but I actually did some reworking to get it to look complete. I got it in a jewel case with the game, and then like the manual, but no long box. But you know how the manuals are the front covers to the long box. Yeah. So I just took like the long box for something, I don't even remember, and I swapped it out, and then I just reprinted the back artwork so it looks complete.
If you ever want a new long box, just buy a copy of Myst. It's always $5. I don't care where you are. I went to a store the other day, and I don't own Myst, but I saw it out on the shelf. It was like Myst on the Saturn for $5, and I was like, I don't fucking want this.
Who does? God. Sorry to the Myst fans out there. The other is definitely Darius Gaiden. It's just because it's a $60 game, and I own it in the Title Legends game, but it's also something I wanted to own an actual copy of. And so, I paid the asking price for it because I wanted to own a competent shooter on the console. And that's a reasonable price too, It's much better than paying the Radiant Silvergun price or the Burning Rangers price.
Fuck, I forgot what I was saying. And it's just like, it's nice to have like a good shooter. Like, they don't really, it's so hard to find like physical, like spaceship shooter games now. Like it's all digital stuff.
You could even call that one a fish ship shooter.
A fish ship shooter. I say another one for me would probably also be, like I say, Clockwork Knight. I'm still playing that one. You sent me that one. And I am the platformer fan here. And I love platformers, and I'm still playing through it, but it's a lot of fun. It's very unique. And I do plan on playing the sequel at some point too.
You heard it here first, folks. The resident platformer.
The Resident Evil.
Alex, the Resident Evil platformer.
Whoa, that's a game I need to make. But overall, I think the Saturn's special.
It's definitely one of my favorites to collect for. It's one of the few that I know is a keeper. You know, like my PlayStation 2 library.
Yeah, it's got some good stuff.
But my Saturn library, it's like, it really does feel special.
Well, it's just like, you know, I've walked into like 1,000 game stores and seen like the same PS2 games, the same, you know, whatever games. You know, I'm like, oh, it's another copy of Jack 2 on the PS2. Oh, it's another copy of whatever on the whatever. But you know, whenever I walk into a game store and I see a long box Saturn game, it's almost like I'm like Indiana Jones, and I'm like, I'm like going through like a temple, and I found this treasure, and I'm like, dun 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 dun, dun, you know, like it's almost like it's just too good to be true, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's part of the reason. Maybe it's fun. I know the games are expensive, but the hunt is fun.
Yeah, that's fair. And you know, it's also a console. I don't know if I've bought more than like one or two of my games online for it. I think most of them I found in the wild.
Yeah, you know what? Me too. I think the only games I've bought online were Fighters Mega Mix, because I really wanted that one, and I bought some tennis game for like $10, and it sucks ass. So it was like not Virtua, but it was like virtual tennis, and it was just shit.
Ouch.
Yeah, but it was cheap. That's why I bought it.
Any recommendations to fans as far as like starting a Saturn collection?
Definitely don't pay the online prices for a lot of this stuff. I say once again, if you don't have access to like retro game stores, then you might not have a choice. You know.
And I should clarify, like, to someone who doesn't want to get an action replay cart, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, people in our situation, yes, that don't have the action replay cart. Definitely, you could find a Sega Saturn. I bought mine for $60. I bought Teddy's for $50, which was cheaper than mine. Then, I mean, you know, then like I said, you can find games out in the wild. Just give it time. It's almost a console that like you can't expect to like build a big collection for overnight. You know, it takes time.
Yeah, let's do the best things in life.
But it's definitely special.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. I think my tip is just, you know, show it love. Show as much as you're willing to give it.
Show it love.
Show it love.
What was it like, Teddy, with the first time you held your Saturn?
It was a joy. It was a bundle of joy. It's like, look, Ma, it's a Saturn.
And what was your mom like? She was like, a what?
Pretty much. She's like, I thought you were having a PlayStation.
I thought you were having a PlayStation. She was disappointed.
Disappointed.
But a PS1 will cost you like $10, and a Saturn will cost you like $60. So which one is more valuable?
Yeah. 6 PlayStation 1s or a Sega Saturn?
Maybe if you tape them together, they might be as valuable as the Sega Saturn.
All right, that about wraps up the discourse. Let us know your experience with the Saturn below.
Sega Sanshiro, Sega Sanshiro.
And of course, to all of our Sanshiro podcast listeners, in the future, when we have a podcast, we do run this on YouTube as well, so you can always share feedback there.
In the future, well, in the past, in the future. Well, we're in the future, but they're listening in the past.
In our future.
I get what you mean. Oh.
Great.
Because, okay, sorry. Well, we're on Saturn, so time works a little different.
True.
So.
Good comeback. Good save. Good save.
Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let us know in the comments. Did you like the Saturn? Did you hate the Saturn? Spencer, don't you even think about it.
Poor Spencer.
Don't even touch the comment, Spencer. I don't want to know.
This is Sega Overload month.
Do not comment on any of our Sega videos, Spencer.
Sega September. Look at that.
Sega Timber.
Segtember. Beautiful.
I think if Spencer comments on this video, then we should just do a whole video about why Spencer's wrong.
Spencer, why you should try Sega.
Yeah, Spencer, try Sega. We should just send Spencer a bunch of Sega shit.
Love you, Spencer.
He doesn't like Sega.
But hopefully you do.
I know I do.
Hopefully you guys at home do.
I know I do.
It's hot. I'm going to go play some Segs.
Some Segs. I'm going to play some... Yo, guys, see you later. I'm going to play some Segs.
Hey, we're having hot Segs right now.
We say Segs, I think of eggs. So it's like, hey, what do you have for breakfast? We got you Segs.
Segs and cheese.
The
finest in life.
Bacon and Segs.
Yeah.
Nothing beats Segs.
Segs. Okay. Button mappers.
What the fuck?
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Hey y'all, don't forget to subscribe to them button mappers.